Print family, thank you all for joining us tonight on this Thursday night. Thank you. Thank you. Instagram viewers, YouTube viewers, Facebook, all of you all, thank you for joining us. And tonight's topic is your relationship worth fighting for?
Oh, also, can you pull it up on the check our mics really quick? Make sure we're getting a good sound check in. Check all the cameras. Peace, peace. Instagram following, getting on in here, settling on in.
Yep.
Sounding good.
Sounds good.
YouTube. All right. Let's head on in. So, this topic was actually based off of a great question that we got. A little longer than usual, but that's okay because it helps really set what I think is a good detail for actually understanding whether or not, hey, is this something worth fighting for, or is it like it? Is it not?
Yep.
So, let's dig on into this while I pull this up. Hold on really quick. As always, though, this is a live show, so you're welcome to ask your questions or your comments. Your input is greatly appreciated. So thank you all for joining us. Why does it always do this? And I'm always waiting to see if it fixes, and it doesn't. There we go. All right. So the question was, when do you know when to stop fighting for the relationship? I have been dating my boyfriend for a year and a half. We are closer than ever right now. I love him so much, but we have our fair share of problems. Things have never been easy. Some mistakes were made early on, lots of arguments and fights throughout the relationship, but we always try to work through the problems. We had a big fight yesterday that happened as they always do. I did something small. He got mad. I apologized. Things blew up. He got very mad. I asked him to try to calm down or take a few minutes. He didn't do either and said I need to change the things I do. I know I'm not perfect and I make my mistakes and am at fault for things too. At the end, he just went to bed in the middle with no warning, and I got so mad. I genuinely try so hard to do everything right, but I almost feel not good enough. I ask for him to stay calm and to give me reassurance and to tell me to communicate, but he blamed me for pulling his strings. We always have things we think the other should work on, so we're always trying to get better, I guess. There's just always seems to be problems, though, and it's almost exhausting. It feels slightly controlling at points. Part of me wants to keep fighting and never give up, but I also feel like we have so many problems and that shouldn't be the case. Have we tried, but it just will never work how we want? Are relationships always just hard where you need to fight? Please help. I love him more than anything, but sometimes I hurt so bad from the fights and his anger. Yeah.
Yep.
It's a lot to unpack there.
So I'm assuming they're a young couple.
Yeah, I think
Boyfriend
so
and girlfriend.
too. Yeah.
And they're just having a hard time conflict resolving.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very typical when you are in a young relationship or either even an older relationship and don't know how to communicate properly.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I see that she did was that she basically tried to have a conversation with him while he was inflamed, while he was upset. So, of course, we're going to talk about some tips and ways in which you can um, prevent these type of situations from happening, but also to make them better. And in that moment in time, she should have wait until both of them are no longer upset, highly upset with each other, and then ask, is this a good time to talk about this?
Yeah, versus asking him to try to calm down and take a few minutes away. It's better if you take that initiative to be like, all right, I'm going to just step away
Right.
for that moment versus, you trying to tell him. It's what I see a lot here is the controlling dynamic. It's funny because it's like a mirror. She says, he gets mad at the small things and I hold on to things so it's kind of the mirror of really, like you said, the communication, not knowing how to, be able to find that middle ground within the whole communication
Right.
scheme of relationship.
Right, because naturally, what happens when you're in a relationship and you are arguing, you want to try to. One person tries to resolve the conflict as fast as they can, and then the other person doesn't want to talk or shut down. So when you're at a stalemate that way, you
Yeah.
need to really, if you can, remove yourself from the situation. Both calm down, cool down, and then talk about the issue, negotiate a compromise, and then also put that compromise into action.
Yeah. One thing though I really want to address starting off is kind of the reoccurring association that a relationship is, well, in particular, that her relationship has never been easy. She made note of this twice. I kind of always try to pay attention to things a person says more than once. It really gives you a peek into the reoccurring thoughts that you're having in your mind. And we always say, it's common knowledge now, your inner reality really does create that outer reality. So a lot of the perspective of your relationship, if you say things are never going to be or have never been easy, or I wanted to go specifically back where she said at the end, our relationships always just hard where they need to fight. You will constantly see that. Great day, right? You will constantly see like that whole thing manifest within your actual relationship, because it will continuously seem like you always got to fight. But a healthy romantic relationship does not require work in that manner. Don't associate fighting with work, or that's what we mean. That's what work is within a relationship, because it's not. Fighting is not that work. The effort of learning how to communicate effectively is the work. The ability to resolve those conflicts, and even the ability to build trust, that is the work. But it's certainly not fighting has to be fighting being the only way of bringing about such work within the relationship. But if you are doing, like you said, constantly having unresolved issues, then you're going to certainly keep having those reoccurring fights where it's not even gonna be pretty much effective.
Right.
Yeah. A relationship should really feel easy and effortless. It shouldn't be always like rah, rah, rah. It should really be a state of flow state. That was one thing I really noticed right easy about our relationship from the very beginning. And that's honestly what I believe a healthy romantic relationship should feel like. It should feel like that flow state of, the being fully engaged in your relationship and having joy and satisfaction, being willing to put in the added effort that's needed to actually build that connection and to feel supported and to feel accepted within your relationship. Because if you don't, and make sure that it's getting reciprocated, because if it's not, then it's going to feel like she says, where I don't feel like I'm good enough or whatever. I'm trying to think. I don't want to skew a person's word. I try to always put them what she said, what the person says exactly, but it was something. I'm trying to find it. Something about like she always just doesn't feel good enough. But that's what it would look like, that natural trapped whole thing. You good?
Yep, I'm good.
I know. My husband, he's working, so he's
Just-
like
I'm-
working and doing this all at the same time. So it's all right.
Yep.
We gonna make it happen.
It's football season. Sorry. So we're also able to overcome challenges together and grow as a couple. So
Yeah,
you have to be able to do that.
Yeah, certainly. Because constant fighting, it's exhausting. Like she said, like it really will feel draining. It really will feel stressful, and it will certainly take a toll on your emotional and physical health throughout the whole relationship. So
Yeah. Well, I also want to throw out there too, you don't need to try to win arguments. And that's when you get into the situation of competing, and that's probably what they're doing.
Yeah.
So that's what we don't normally understand when you first get into a relationship and you start arguing. The first thing you try to do is talk about the person, talk down to them, or downgrade them, all of this other nonsense, cuss them out. And in that moment in time, the person is going to try to do the same thing to you, if not worse. So you get stuck in this cycle of competition. And we talked about this before. And that's not where you want to be at, because then you're stuck on trying to win an argument as opposed to resolve a conflict.
Right.
And that's where ultimately at times it will isolate you, make you feel distant
Right.
in the
Yeah.
relationship and then make you not even want to be in that relationship. So
Exactly.
you don't have to look at those situations as so, but use it as an opportunity to build better communication.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And we're certainly going to dig into more so whether or not this relationship, in our opinion, is worth fighting for, but more so just some signs that's really going to be evident of whether or not, these are clear indicators that this relationship is worth fighting for and it's not. But we do want to make sure to address some of the main things that really are going to need to be addressed in general if you plan to work it out or if you don't plan to work it out, because you can't take the same bad habits into the next relationship either. So both, regardless, you have to figure out, how can you fight or have conflict within a healthy way, because like my husband was saying, it will damage your trust, and certainly that damaged trust within your relationship is certainly going to make it harder for you to resolve conflicts in the future. In general, you're just gonna it's kind of like being stuck in a cycle, right? Of constantly not making any progress because you're not putting in or doing the effort of figuring out, taking that step back and assessing, hey, what's the real root cause of our issues? What's the real reason why we're constantly getting mad over the small things, she says, or, blowing up versus, being able to respectfully talk about what's going on, what's wrong, what are the issues, and how can you work to resolve that. So it's really just important for you to take the time to learn how to resolve conflicts in a healthy way. We've gone over this on a lot of videos. I think this is even within our wifeconomics.com course, we talk about what we call troubleshooting relationships for a whole week, really just digging in. And that's, to me, not even enough justice. Our other week goes into just simple communication, which really helps the whole troubleshooting thing. But this is one thing that you have to be able to do in order to have a healthy relationship. It goes for everything within your relationship, whether the conflict is actually in the relationship or the conflict is coming from some other source. Whatever it is, you just have to be able to get through conflict in a healthy way. So what does this look like? Of course, being able to communicate in a way that's respectful, talking about your wants and your needs in a constructive way, being able to let things go. You can't have resentment. That resentment over time will certainly lead to you wanting to leave the relationship and not even wanting to get into this whole thing, over and over again. I mean, it's natural. That's just what's going to happen. No relationship is going to survive off or anything like that. But if you're struggling in general, I think to get more specific, we would really have to dig into like what your conflicts are really over. This person never mentioned per se what they were arguing over. So it's kind of hard to really diagnose like, oh, maybe you could have said something this way or that way. All of that is really personal. So I would really recommend, if you're struggling with conflict resolution, bring in a third party, whether that's a healthy, married, happy couple like us, or another one that close within the community. I think any other couples out there that are willing to lend their experience and guidance for other couples coming up, it's certainly going to benefit the community. So we always encourage that. But maybe even a therapist, just making the time to figure out ways that you can strategize within your relationship, specifically on how you can communicate more effectively and resolve conflicts in a healthy way. That's just first off, because if you don't do that, then deciding whether to fight for the relationship, that should be, kind of easy, because that's a dead giveaway that it's not going to last. So yeah.
Yep. But it's important to be realistic about your expectations, of course. So you are not going to be able to fight for a relationship.
Our live was paused. Was that our internet? Are you on the internet? Hold on.
Our video got paused.
Let me see. It says reconnecting. Samsung Flow connection started. Ugh.
We have some technical difficulties on Instagram. Live video pause, reconnecting. Instagram may be down.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's ours because of the storm. We got bad weather going on. We got a whole bunch of internet connections.
Those pop-up thunderstorms.
I know. Trying to see. I don't even know how would we get back up? I think it's best probably just to close it, right? Sorry, y'all, as we go through this again.
Yep. But thank you for bearing with us as we join. There we go.
Checking connection.
All right. As we get our Instagram viewers back.
Oh, sorry, y'all. No, we had a crowd and everything. That we got a storm going on, so it is definitely our internet that is lagging a bit.
Yep.
Thank you for joining back on in Bad Internet Service. Thank y'all. Y'all know how it is. We got a little storm, so we still in it though. So thank y'all for hanging on with us as everybody comes back on in YouTube, Facebook. Thank you all for hanging on as we get back on topic. All right, so let's dig back on in. So the first thing to do to deciding whether or not, the factors, I guess, not thing to do, but the first factor really to consider whether or not a relationship is worth fighting for, because ultimately we can't tell you for sure. We can only give you a little, help along the way so that you can look within yourself and make the best decision for you. That's the best that we can do because it's really going to come down to you. And what's best for you. But of course, this may seem like a no-brainer, but you got to have that direct conversation with your spouse. You got to sit down and talk about your commitment to the relationship. And if you both are committed to making the relationship work, because you cannot do this with just one of you, actually not putting in the work that's needed. You have to both be willing to do what's needed so that you can create a better future for yourself. So get specific. Ask them that question like, hey, what do you see for our future of our relationship? What are some things that, you're willing to do to make it work? Is there something you're not willing to do? Have you reached the end of your wits? Like, what is, how are you feeling? What are you thinking about it? Because you really got to be honest and transparent. And hopefully your spouse is honest and transparent with you and not, BSing you. So we're going to be real with you on this. You got to pay attention to their actions. Actions speak way louder than words. So it's important to pay attention to what your spouse is doing and not just what they are saying. This is how you know that they are, like, if they tell you, hey, yeah, I'm willing to put in the work, then they need to be making that effort to communicate. They need to be making that effort to resolve issues with you. They need to be making that effort to compromise with you. All of that has to happen. And you got to make time for each other within the relationship. Like, that has to be done. And those just, those are clear indications that they are doing it and ready for. But if not,
Yep. And be honest with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to be honest with yourself about your own needs and expectations. So what do you need from your spouse in order to feel happy and secure in the relationship? Talk about those things.
Yeah. And be honest,
Yep.
like you said, really. Are you genuinely happy? Like, is it something that where you can't see yourself really going through life without this person? That's important to know. Like, if that's something you really want to do. And I know people always say, oh, when it comes to marriage, it's not about happiness. I think that comes when you're in the relationship, you're in the marriage, you're fully committed, and you said that, hey, we're going to stick this out and we're going to, make it work. I think then a lot of times, hey, sometimes it's going to require that sacrifice of happiness just so you all can work through what you need to work through. I do believe that conflict is a way for your relationship to create movement. Sometimes if there's change that needs to be done, if somebody needs to, do whatever they need to do that they're not doing, conflict is often a good way to, jumpstart some of that if it needs to take place. So no relationship is perfect. You're going to have its ups and downs. But what's really going to make the difference is if you're both committed to making it work. And it's different if you're married. That's what I was really trying to get to. If you're married, you really have to already know, I already signed up for it. I got to be committed to making it work, and it's going to be hard. But it can be a real rewarding experience, especially if you're working through everything in a healthy way and genuinely wanting to do it. But if it's just like a regular relationship where you're dating, then you got to weigh the good with the bad, and whether or not this is someone that you could continuously do life with, because that's a more important decision to make before you go bringing in contracts and stuff. Marriage contracts.
Yep.
So yeah. You
So
good?
these are the top questions to ask yourself when considering if your relationship is worth fighting for.
Yeah.
So look at the positive aspects of your relationship. Ask yourself, what do you love about your partner? What do you enjoy doing together? And what do you enjoy about your relationship?
Yeah. I always start with the positive. I always like doing that, of course. But then you got to take a look at the negative aspects, ask yourself, what are the problems that aren't within your relationship, and are they fixable genuinely? And how long have they been this way? That's going to make a big, big impact on whether or not, they really are fixable. And sometimes, again, that's why you got to bring in that third party when it comes to, I guess, more so the negative aspects, because you could be a little blinded by actually, not knowing, are we really up for this? Is my spouse really, putting in those actions, doing the right things to actually help make the relationship work? Or am I kind of just, letting things letting things go and hoping that they resolve themselves on their own? So sometimes you need a third party's help with that. So never be afraid of getting the help if you need it. And of course, that's why we do these shows too, to offer that help. Just you being here, being in alignment, listening to what we're saying, you're aligning yourself to really have a healthy relationship. And to do that, I like to think of God put us up to this work to more so hold the vibration of that, to actually being able to have a good relationship so that other people can see it, grab onto it, and create the same thing within themselves. So it really can be done if you're really willing to seek out the information you need in order to apply it to your life and make it work for you too. So yeah.
Yep. And ask yourself if you are both willing to put in the effort to make things work.
Yeah, we talked about that. We can't understate that, but that's a big question to certainly ask. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. And then look at your long-term goals. Do you have the same vision for the future? That's very important.
Mm-hmm.
Because if
Yeah.
you all need to be on one accord about what goals that you are setting in order to achieve them. So I mean, if one person's trying to do one thing financially and the other person's trying to do something else, that is a conflict in which you both need to resolve.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you, of course, ask yourself one more time, are you genuinely happy in the relationship? Now, these are the 5 signs, just some general 5 signs that we think would really show if your relationship is worth fighting for. If you see these signs within your relationship, we're going to give you some examples of kind of what this would look like too, actively working on in the relationship. If you see them, then yeah, it's a clear indicator that, hey, my spouse really is trying to put in the work and the effort. Maybe I do need to look at this from a different angle and see that, yeah, this is probably worth fighting. But if you don't see these signs, and also some of the other signs that we're going to get into later too, you're going to know that, yeah, this probably might not be worth my time and my effort. So I got some decisions to make. Decisions.
Yep.
So the first sign, you want to start with me? You good?
Yeah.
Time
So
to start.
you still love and respect each other.
Mhm.
So this is probably the most important sign of all. So if you still love and respect each other, even when things are tough, then it's worth fighting for the relationship. I would even take it a step further and add admiration in there. If you admire the person still, then of course.
Yeah, that's true.
And then also you should show you still you show that you still love and respect each other by regularly expressing your love and appreciation. That's the admiration for each other, even when you're arguing.
Yeah.
So you might also show respect for each other by listening to each other's opinions and feelings, even if you don't agree with them.
Yeah. And that's important for this young lady that wrote in to think about, because I always say I'm sure y'all have heard this too. What most important is how you argue. How do y'all handle those conflicts? How do y'all talk to each other? If y'all really show that respect for each other when y'all is going through it, when you don't like each other, when things is just like, like, do you still respect each other though? Are you willing to still bite your tongue and be like, nah, I ain't gonna take that. That's too far. I'm not gonna say that. Like I'm gonna address this a nice way. I'm gonna back off. I might say something I don't want to say. That's showing respect for each other. And it should take place in those moments where it really matters, because that makes or break the relationship. And then also, if you're actually listening not to so much agree or just to take blame, you can't blame each other. That was another thing that was pointed out, always, blaming each other. And sometimes you can't even blame yourself so much. Don't focus so much on that, but just really try to listen from the perspective of, I want to hear what my spouse has to say so I can gain understanding. You have to understand each other's opinions, your feelings, your thoughts, so that you can then merge them together into your life, like so that y'all can then communicate and compromise. That's the only way it's going to happen. Listening is a big, big part of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're willing to communicate and compromise, communication is essential in any relationship, but it is essential, especially important when things are tough.
Yeah.
So if you're both willing to communicate openly and honestly, and to compromise when necessary, then you have a good chance of making it work, even through the toughest times.
Right. Yeah, you have to. Definitely matters. Yep. And then also, if you are actually showing that you're willing to, put in the effort. So this means if you're we kind of hit on this a little bit earlier, but if you're actually taking the time to do those things that are going to help you problem solve better, maybe consider asking, each other if you're willing to go to counseling or therapy. If your relationship is really struggling, you agreeing to that is a positive, direction of showing like, hey, yeah, I'm willing to put in this work. It may require me being extra vulnerable to a stranger or whatever, but hey, it shows that you're willing to learn and you're willing to grow. And that's most important overall in the whole relationship.
Yep. So you can see a future together. So if you can imagine spending the rest of your life with your partner, then that's a good sign that your relationship is worth fighting for. So you should talk about your dreams and goals for your future and make plans together.
Mm-hmm.
So you should also feel a sense of excitement and optimism about the future of your relationship with your spouse.
Yeah, that's that. I always think of that flow state, like kind of what I was hitting on earlier about that flow state of genuinely like being excited for your future, genuinely, like making plans together. You shouldn't be spending so much time arguing, because you should be spending so much time excitedly talking about, oh, this is happening, more so not just dwelling on, the bad things or allowing a lot of the conflicts to come up. Sometimes we talked about this, I think a couple times this week, but stagnicity within your relationship. If y'all aren't making any progress within the goals that you have set for yourselves, that you have set for your relationship, whatever those goals are, if y'all aren't actively working towards that, that's going to cause you to feel within yourself like bored and unsatisfied and unfulfilled, because you're not going after the things that you say that you want in life. And if you're doing this with the spouse, it's really important that you're doing this together. You should be talking all the time about your goals, your dreams. That's all we do. We go all day long just talking about, oh, we're going to do this next. We're going to do this next. Like that's literally been our lives for over a decade now. And it's constant. It's a nice, satisfying flow state to be in. It doesn't feel hard. It feels in a way very effortless, and it's easy. That makes all of this enjoyable and really feels like you're working towards something together.
So you make each other happy. So when you're in a relationship with someone who makes you happy, it's a lot easier to weather the storms.
Yeah.
So you might make each other feel happy by doing things that you both enjoy, by being supportive and understanding, and by making each other feel loved and appreciated.
Yeah. And not taking each other for granted.
Right.
I think that is one of the clear breakdowns within a relationship, is when you've been together maybe for so long, and you're so used to your spouse being there that you start to, take them for granted. Don't do that. That's a way to not, you got to appreciate the things that you have in your life so that they continue to grow and flourish and get that loving energy from you. If you're taking it for granted, you're not pointing any or directing any of your energy towards helping it to flourish, towards helping it to grow, because you're not appreciating it. So, appreciation is certainly one of the top things to have in life in general, but especially within a relationship. It's going to help your spouse feel valued. It's going to help you feel valued. That's probably why this she says, I don't feel good enough. Well, are y'all valuing each other? Do y'all tell each other, even in those times where you're, got mad at each other about the same thing, but you noticed a little bit that, hey, I noticed you calmed down a little bit, or it didn't take us as long to blow up this time. Like, go back and tell each other, like, hey, we did that, like, that's okay. Like, y'all gotta lighten up so much. You don't have to be so hard on each other. And I think one of the things that you said yesterday that kind of rung in my head all day today for some reason was how, you don't look at arguments as a time to just point out a person's mistakes over and over and over, but just more so as a time for you to, point out the things that you're going to do better the next time.
Right.
So it's not a bash fest. You don't want to just focus on that all the time. It's certainly not going to make you happy. And that is a clear sign that, you being happy is a clear sign that it's worth fighting for in your relationship. So please make sure to see if your relationship is actually having those things and be honest with it overall.
Yeah. So here are some signs that your relationships is not worth fighting for. So number one, if you don't feel loved or respected by your partner, then it's difficult to imagine a future where you will be happy in the relationship.
Yeah.
And then if you're constantly fighting with your partner, it's a sign that there are some underlying issues that need to be addressed. If you can't resolve these issues, the fighting is likely to continue to make the relationship worse. Competition.
Yeah.
You're fighting to win the argument.
Yeah.
Arguing.
Yeah. And if you have tried to fix those problems in your relationship and nothing has worked, then that, maybe a sign that those problems are maybe too big to overcome for you guys alone, at least. And certainly within a marriage, you got to try all the avenues. So you got to go to counseling. You can't just call it quits on that alone. But, if you're in a regular relationship and it just doesn't feel easy. It feels too hard. It feels like the problems are just too much. This lady pointed out in the beginning, she said we had our fair share of problems in the beginning and things have never been easy. So that, when you enter a relationship and you have so many trials and tribulations so soon, it really can put a damper on your whole relationship because you'll constantly, it's like you start off like in a negative, if you're looking at like a score, although you shouldn't look at it, taking score of each other per se, but as like your relationship score or your relationship cup, if you start off, constantly having arguments over and over and over, your cup is going to get empty and then it's going to get in a negative. And then you in a relationship and you trying to get out of the negative and then get back into the filling the cup back up. So it's a lot harder and a lot harder to overcome if you aren't already deep in love with each other and really wanting to work things out. So, yeah.
So if you have different values or goals, it can be difficult to make a relationship work. So it can't find a way to compromise. If you can't find a way to compromise on these things, the relationship is likely to be unstable.
Yeah, certainly. You can't. That we always talk about that, the having to make sure that your intentions are there and aligned within your whole relationship from the very, very beginning. That's always important. So then that way there's no confusion. What are your marriage vision? What does that look like for both of you? You always say you're dating to actually get in a relationship, a good, steady, long, committed relationship, and marriage should be the goal. So what does this look like in a happy, committed relationship for you in your mind? What does this look like? And are they aligned? You can't, and that goes all the way down to like after y'all have had kids, to even retirement. You can't not agree on these things. You cannot, like, you have to agree on a lot of your values, a lot of your goals, or at least being willing to compromise on things, like to actually make it that you're both satisfied still. Even if you're not getting 100% what you thought you wanted, it's very, very close and you're still very, very satisfied. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. If your partner is abusive, either physical or emotional, then the relationship is not worth fighting for. So abuse is never acceptable, and it's important to get out of the relationship as soon as possible.
Yes. Yeah. And it's important that every relationship is different. So, whatever signs, all the signs that we have gone through, sometimes I do want to say again, when you're married, some of these signs aren't a clear indicator that, your relationship's not worth fighting. Sometimes you're going to have to go through some of these things, like maybe constantly fighting with each other until y'all take the steps to get the help that you need, or maybe going through the feelings of, man, I don't feel understood or heard or loved in my relationship, until y'all have gotten to the point where y'all are actually working on things and actually strategizing so that you can both receive what you need from the relationship. It's not that easy to just, jump ship in a marriage. We certainly do not encourage that. If you are married, yeah, you gotta fight, especially if,
What do you mean by
it's
fight?
no, not fight. I was about to say, especially if it's no abuse. That's so funny that I said all connected like that. But yeah, you gotta work. You gotta know that it's worth putting in the effort. I like that a little better versus the whole term fighting, because you shouldn't be physically fighting each other. It should not come to that. But certainly be willing to put in the effort that's needed to make the relationship work or get better, or at least get into a better space, and try a lot if you're married. But yeah.
So if you decide to fight for your relationship, be sure to communicate openly and honestly with your partner. You should. So be willing to work on the problems and make the necessary changes. So if you decide to end the relationship, do so in a respectful and mature way. So don't, be disrespectful and try to be nasty with the person. So you always want to not burn bridges with people, but some people you do want to, you really want to burn bridges with, especially if they're, abusive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah, it's complicated again. It's really going to be personal. All the things that we've gone over, hopefully it helps you to be able to come to some conversation within your own mind, actually sit down and think about, what you're going through and if this is really, really worth it. Because, in particular for this lady, she says she really wants to keep fighting, and you got to weigh if those problems are really worth to keep fighting for, if you're really genuinely happy. You shouldn't feel like you're controlling each other. She says it feels slightly controlling because there always seems to be problems, and you just, you're always at. We often say, to work on things in the sense of together and actually growing together. But sometimes you do have to not be so hard on each other. I think a lot of times we'll be like, oh, we're not doing this right, or we're not doing this right. Not will, but people will be like, oh, we're not doing these things right. And then they'll go get so hard on each other. And then that doesn't make it enjoyable to learn the lessons that you need to learn, or even make it enjoyable to want to put up the effort that it's going to take to actually make a relationship work. So don't be so hard on each other and just be like, oh, y'all, you need to work on this. You ain't doing this right. It is what it is. Like, you can't always expect your spouse to be perfect. And then, you just got to weigh if this is something that you can live with. Don't try to control a person or change a person. You got to look at your spouse the way they are and say right then and there, if my spouse never changes, am I all right with being married with them for the rest of my life? If you can say yes to this, then great. That's the one for you. If you can't say yes to that, do not marry that person. Do not, because all you're going to do is spend most of your time trying to get them to be somebody that they weren't from the beginning. Get with somebody who offers you and shows you and offers you that reassurance without you having to ask for it. I think that was one of the things that she mentioned too. Kind of trying to make sure I covered all the things that popped in my head when reading this, but I asked for him to stay calm and give me the reassurance. That you shouldn't have to beg for that. That your spouse should be able to provide you that comfortable environment through who they are naturally by themselves, without the effort, without, it should flow. It should really, really flow. It shouldn't be work. It shouldn't be a constant fight. Hey, yep. That was today was mainly me and my ranting on because you had your stuff going on, but we got through it. Thank you.
Yep, most definitely. You're welcome, man.
And we're still always taking questions, topics, you can ask questions anonymously on our wifeconomics.com/submit a question website, completely secure. So feel free to take the time to write things out and often figure out within yourself if, hey, through what you're writing, what are some things that I could even think for myself to do, as I figure things out. I think journaling is a great way for a person to really strategize and figure out problems for them, figure out how to work through problems themselves. So that's another reason why we like what we do and why we genuinely do encourage people to write in,
Yep.
Yeah.
So do anyone have any questions, comments, concerns?
Yes, let's go back on our chat. I'm so sorry our Instagram got cut off earlier. Oh, we still got viewers in too because we had a good amount too. So thank you all for joining back in. We got kicked out. Our Wi-Fi a little janky today because of the storm.
Yeah.
But it's all right.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, Blueprint family, thank you all for joining us tonight.
Yes.
And then tomorrow for Marriage Fit Friday, we have a special one for you all. We will be interviewing two couples, a married couple and a dating couple. So that'll be very interesting for you all. So tune in tomorrow for Marriage Fit Friday. Same time, same place. You all have a wonderful night. Peace. Thank you, honey.